Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new malicious compliance content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, Eat Only in the Designated Area, Fine. This happened yesterday at a large regional grocery chain near me. It's the type of place with tons of gourmet and specialty departments, including ready-to-eat food and a little cafe area. The cafe includes a small gated-off outdoor space on the side of the building, which gets pretty busy as people are still hesitant to eat inside right now. There's also a hot foods bar that changes each day of the week. Yesterday being Saturday and game day, the theme was chicken wings. I was picking up my groceries for the week, minding my own business, when I'm hit with the most divine smell I've ever known. Mind you, it's a bit past noon, and I haven't eaten all day. Next thing I know, I'm following the smell like a cartoon thief chasing a pie in a window. I find myself at the hot bar, and possessed by a force far greater than myself, load up a container of wings. I check out, now fully entranced with the aroma of buffalo sauce and knowing full well that these wings aren't going to make it home. I step outside and walk down to the end of the building and sit down on the concrete ledge under the awning, and I go to town on my chicken wings. Like, absolutely unhinged, raccoon out a dumpster, chawing the duck down and not caring about anything else. Proudest moment. No. Would I do it again? Absolutely. It's bliss. Until suddenly, my chickeny meditation is interrupted by that deliberate type of hum that sounds less like a polite throat clearing and more like an engine trying to turn over. I look up and see a well-dressed woman, probably mid-40s, sternly tapping her foot and pointing behind me. Confused, I look over my shoulder and see the no loitering sign. I'm still not getting it. I've obviously got a cart full of groceries I just stepped out with. I explain to her that I'm just enjoying my hot lunch before I head home. She is having none of it. Either eat in the designated cafe area or get out. I point out that all of the cafe tables are full, and I just got a couple more wings. Then she delivers the kicker. Figure it out before I call someone figure it out for you. Fine. I stand up, gathering my wings and leaving the rest of my groceries. I walk the 10 feet to the gated area. Duck between the metal railings. The gate is about 10 yards down the way. Look pointedly around at the occupied tables. Then sit my butt down on the concrete and continue noshing my wings, looking this lady in the eye. She tuts and pulls out a cell phone, ostensibly to call someone to figure it out for me. But either it was for show, or they thought she was as nuts as I did, because I finished my chicken wings in peace, albeit among a sea of confused patrons. Edit, a couple clarifying points. 1. No, I don't know whether Chic Karen worked for the supermarket or not. The more I think of it, maybe she didn't, since I don't remember seeing a badge or a lanyard or anything. She was just dressed nicely, too. Was it technically loitering? Hell, I don't know. Those signs are usually put up around here to ward off panhandlers and other down-on-their-luck individuals. Morally, it's awful, but legally I think they can kick anyone off their property on any grounds. 3. Yes, it was a Wegmans. Good job, clever Redditor. Yes, I'll be going back. Maybe if I see her again, I'll just eat progressively more outlandish things on the sidewalk. I think they have baby back ribs on the hot bar sometimes. Next one is titled, Want to bill me for chopping down my trees? I have a solution. This is my absolute favorite story about my late grandfather. I was young at the time this happened, but have talked to a few people in adulthood to get a few details I didn't know before. My grandfather lived on the main street in a small farming town of a few thousand. The town was laid out in the classic grid pattern off the main highway. On his property, he had 3 large pine trees 40 to 50 feet high in a line fairly close to the sidewalk, and over the years the roots had started to lift up and crack some of the sidewalk. Understandably, the town wasn't pleased and wanted the trees removed so further damage wasn't incurred. Instead of coming to my grandfather to find a solution, they sent over an invoice for tree removal from property that amounted to more than his yearly property tax. Instead of paying, he chose malicious compliance. He took out his chainsaw and felled all 3 trees right across the main street, without warning, on a Friday long weekend. When the town responded with a few workers, my grandfather bluntly argued the trees weren't on his property, therefore couldn't be charged for their removal. They looked at the invoice the town sent, and rather than argue with the most stubborn man in town, they decided to just cut up and haul off the trees themselves. It took all afternoon and traffic was deeded around the block. They patched the sidewalk and the stumps are still there to this day. The town got the trees removed and my grandfather didn't pay a cent. Win-win. Next one is titled, That's Not What I'm Paid For. Okay then. I used to work for a chain of pubs who loved to have promotions tied up in red tape. At the point in this story, I was technically a server on minimum wage, but doing supervisor work. This had been going on for a while as the manager hadn't submitted the paperwork. In our country, if you're on minimum wage, your employer must pay for any time you have to be available for work / required to remain on the premises, not just if you are actively working. Manager would frequently rota me on awful split shifts like 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., then 5 p.m. to close, approximately midnight by the time tills / cleaning was done. Because I was the only supervisor on shift, I was expected to remain available for those middle 3 hours in case I was needed for manager stuff. Now, initially I didn't mind this so much cause the inconvenience of traveling back home to just come in again. I just chilled out with some free experiment from the kitchen and a good book in the corner of the bar. I did, however, change payroll if I was expected to jump back into action to add on however long it was. Few weeks into me doing this, manager noticed. Manager, why are you down for 14 hours on Thursday? I scheduled you for 12.5. Me, it picked up at 3:30 and colleague was getting slammed. Manager, but why have you changed payroll? Me, because that's what I worked. Manager, but you weren't scheduled to work, you chose to. Me, suppose you told me to be available during those hours. Manager, I'm changing it back. You get paid for what's agreed. Me, what about tomorrow then? I'm on the same split shift. Manager, you'll be paid for when you're scheduled to work. Don't change it again without my approval. All right then, have it your way. The next day, bang on 2 p.m., I stepped off the bar, grabbed my stuff and walked a few doors down to the local cafe. The server and the chef had my number if they needed me, cause I felt guilty leaving them to it. But they agreed not to let on to the manager exactly where I was, just to say I'd left if he came downstairs from his flat. Server also said she would call him in the first instance if it was busy. I don't think she ever liked someone having to hang around unpaid on principal cause she was a minimum wage worker too. A warning text preempted his call, and his mood was as you could expect. I confirmed I wasn't in the building. He demanded I return. I threw the legislation in his face and reminded him I wasn't being paid for those 3 hours, so I wasn't obligated to be on site. He wanted to go back to what I had been doing, but I told him that was off the table. He wants me there for 3 extra hours a day. I'm getting paid for it even if I've got my feet up. I told him his other option was to sign the promotion paperwork, and then the law wouldn't cover me in the same way. It was signed before I got back to the bar. Not long after, I applied for a transfer. Next one is titled, Want No Air Conditioning. You'll get no air conditioning, even if it kills you. I work in building operations for some high-rise office buildings in sunny Southern California. I maintain electrical systems, plumbing, HVAC, basically anything within the building I fix. My background is HVAC, with plenty of certifications and experience in how things work. The building I'm currently at has covers on the thermostats to prevent tenants from messing with them. Side note, our HVAC system is a pneumatic system that uses air pressure to operate everything. You need a specialty gauge to check what the pneumatic signal is calling for, heating, cooling, or nothing. Therefore, we don't let tenants adjust their own stats, because without the gauge, you're only guessing what you're doing. Anyways, Mr. Very Important puts in a call. He is way too cold. No problem, I go up and find his thermostat has had the cover pried off and set to 68 degrees and then half put back on. I check my gauge, and it's operating properly for being set at 68. I adjusted back up to 72, which is standard temperature, and let Mr. Very Important know someone had messed with the thermostat, and that's why he was so cold. Halfway through telling him, he cuts me off and says, I don't care about the thermostat. I want these vents shut down. I don't want to feel any air. I try to explain it will be a lot more comfortable in a few minutes, and shutting the vents is not a good idea in the summer. Well, Mr. Very Important isn't having it. After all, he's very important and knows better than me how comfort cooling works despite my decade-plus experience. And to top it off, he's an absolute jerk about the whole thing. After being cut off for the 3rd time, I finally had enough and say, okay, no problem. You want the vents completely shut? And he responds, yes, if I feel any air blow on me, we're going to have issues that your boss will have to sort out. So I shut the vents completely at the damper at the AC box. No air will come out. Well, I've dealt with very important people before, and I know what to expect. So I put a note on the work order. Mr. Very Important asked for no air to come out of the vents in his office despite my objections, so vents have been shut per tenant request. If you're aware, the West Coast is going through a gnarly heat wave right now, so naturally Mr. Very Important puts in a call saying that his office is too hot. I accept the call, but I go on my way doing my normal duties, which I'm very busy with as we just had one of 4 people on our team leave. It takes me 3 days to get back to Mr. Very Important's office, and he's losing his mind at how hot it is. And to be fair, his office was like a sauna. I'd be angry too if I had to work in that office. I ask if he wants his vents opened back up to allow the air to flow into his office and cool it down. The dude looks like I just kicked his dog when he realizes closing the vents was his demand that I tried to talk him out of. I open them up real quick because it's very easy and I leave. Apparently, he didn't like being called out like that and called my property managers to complain. I'm not sure what they said back to him, but I certainly got a good laugh out of the whole thing. Last one is titled, "Write Me Up for Not Guarding the Spill. I'll never leave a spill unattended again." I used to work at Walmart, and the store I worked in had a rule that if you see a spill, you are to guard the area to keep customers from slipping and falling. You were not to leave the spill for any reason while you flagged down another employee so that they could fetch cleaning supplies. Only managers and the cleaning crew had radios. I understand the logic here, as a lawsuit would certainly cost much more than an hourly employee's time standing next to a spill until it was cleaned up. However, there are a few issues with this in practice. I worked the evening shift in the meat department, and most days I was the only person in my department. I was situated between frozen foods and produce, which more often than not only had one-person shifts as well, but they also closed much earlier than my department. This meant that I was the only person in my corner of the store for about half of my shift. If I came across a spill, there was no telling how long I would have to wait around for another employee to come by because there was literally nobody else working in or around my area. Also, being in the meat department, we had multiple cleaning stations all around. One was always a few steps away. One day, while working alone, I noticed a small spill. So I stood next to it per procedure for about 10 minutes. And this time nobody, customer nor coworker, had even entered my view. I couldn't help but think how dumb this was, as I could see a cleaning station just on the other side of a bunker. I decided to throw in the flag and just go get the cleaning supplies and take care of it myself, because even if a customer did come around, I could still see the spill and easily call out to them to watch their step. Unsurprisingly, I was able to make the round trip without any incidents. As I was cleaning it, a manager came walking up and took notice of me. "Manager, what happened here?" Me, "Just a spill. I've got it all sorted." Manager, "Did you just happen to have cleaning supplies on you?" Me, "No, but they were just right there. I was able to fetch them without losing sight of the spill." Manager, "That's not how we view things. Someone could have gotten hurt." Me, "No, as I could have called to anyone that came near it. I was never more than a few steps away." Manager, "Doesn't matter. You should have stood next to the spill and waited for someone else to come by." This went on for a few minutes, but the manager was not budging, so I conceded. That was not good enough for him, as he then proceeded to write me up for negligence and unsafe work practices. I was livid, but I was also a college student and needed the job, so I just kept quiet and returned to my shift. A week or two later, as I was once again the only person working in my corner of the store, I happened upon another spill. This time I shrugged and decided to guard it as if my job depended on it. I checked my watch and noticed that I had about 3 hours left on my shift, and had a small laugh at the thought that I might be standing in that spot guarding a puddle instead of closing my department. 10 minutes passed. 30 minutes passed. 1 hour passed. Around this time, I was bored out of my mind, but then I heard a call over the intercom system that made it so much more worth it. "We need an associate from the meat department to the back for a truck." This was followed by a few other calls for other departments for their trucks arriving as well. I started laughing out loud at this because I knew that this meant that the very few people that were likely to come by my department were now at the loading dock unloading trucks, while I stood guard over my puddle. A few minutes passed before I heard the second call. "We need an associate from the meat department to the back for a truck." I just stood there counting the lights on the ceiling. 1 hour left of my shift, and there still had not been a single fellow employee walk by. I assumed everyone was starting to finish up their own trucks by this point, and would likely soon have to start unloading my truck as well. I was watching the minutes go by in anticipation, trying to decide if someone would come find me before my shift ended or not. I got my answer 15 minutes before the end of my shift, as the very same manager from before came storming through the meat department furious. We made eye contact and he stormed over to me and started yelling about how they have been calling for me to unload the truck and how they are now behind schedule and so on. Once he took a breath long enough for me to speak, I asked simply, "Can you go to a spill station and grab something to clean this up? I've been here a while now." He glanced down at the puddle next to me and I thought he was going to explode. Manager: "You mean to tell me that you didn't unload the truck because you were watching a spill?" Me: "Yes." Manager: "Why did you just clean it up?" Me: "But leaving the spill would be unsafe for any customers. Besides, you wrote me up for doing that very thing recently, right?" The manager tossed his hands up in defeat and walked the 15 steps away to the nearest spill station and returned with supplies that he promptly gave me to clean the spill myself. Manager: "Once you are done, go back to the loading dock and start on your truck." Me: "Sorry, I have only about 10 minutes left on my shift, and as I've been standing here guarding the spill, I never got my second break. I'm going to the break room for a bit before clocking out. You'll need to find someone to close down my department as well." The manager just stomped off in a rage. I cleaned up the spill, played on my phone in the break room for a bit, and clocked out with a smile on my face. I know that the manager just made someone else do all the work and wasn't personally affected by this, but knowing that I could be a thorn in his side was enough for me. Thanks for listening.